So how much work is involved in raising Coturnix quail? Well, not a lot. The care and maintenance is very low. These birds, these little guys, are very independent and they will pretty much look after themselves throughout their entire life. You don't need to do a hell of a lot. There is a bit of setup involved, that's about it. But there are some things that you do daily, weekly, quarterly, and then ad hoc things come up. And I'm just going to run through those. So every day I go out to the cage and I do basically a health check on the birds. I look to see if there's any injured or sick birds and I'll deal with them accordingly and just see how they're going, sort of get a feel for what's happening out there. I also check the perimeter of the cage. I look for any attacks that may have happened from predators overnight. I do sometimes have rats that try to dig under and I've sort of fortified that. The rats will eat the eggs but they'll mainly go for the food. The rats here aren't big enough to eat the quail, but I believe in some areas they would be. So I need to fortify that and check that, and then occasionally something bigger might try to break through the cage. I've got snakes in my area sort of that come around occasionally and they could get through a hole. That may just happen just because of, well, the cages age over time and things pop out and things get loose. So you've got to do ongoing checks of that. But most of the time there's not much there, and just the daily check is just looking after these guys just to make sure that they're healthy. The daily checks obviously include water, so you want to look at the water. I will fill the water a couple of times a week during summer, less often in winter. That's pretty easy care and maintenance really. It's not a daily thing, but I do need to check it because you can spring a leak and then that would be really bad if they ran out of water. I'll always check for leaks and I will periodically clean this out with a toothbrush, an old toothbrush. You can see it gets a bit of gunk in there and then you just pour some water in and flush it out. So I'll do that probably once a month if there's not too many birds in it, sometimes more frequently when you've got a lot of birds. So just flush it out. Watch out. It's a bit cleaner. The food, I keep quite a bit of food in there unless there's a big storm system coming when it can get a bit wet and it kind of spoils. I generally keep quite a lot of food in there where I can go up to a week. I usually check it before then, but it can go up to a week that I'll keep out there. It won't go off because it keeps pretty well and it'll keep up there and I just keep an eye on that. So it's not much work to actually top that up. It's pretty quick and pretty handy. I keep the seed nearby and I just top it up once a week. And I'll check the feeders, see how much is in there. It's pretty full. It depends on the number of feeders you've got, the number of birds. But if you're organised, you don't need to fill them up too often. Obviously, daily I need to collect the eggs. That's another thing I need to do. So I will look through the area, and usually later in the afternoon, and collect the eggs and eat the eggs or incubate them and whatever I'm going to do with them. But that is a daily thing you need to do. I've found if you leave them out there in summer, if I leave them out even for one extra day, particularly if the sun's rays hit it, the egg gets spoiled really quickly. Generally need to get them inside and then they're okay. So from a monthly perspective, there's a few things I do. I tend to look at the sand baths or dirt baths. They often need a bit of care and maintenance by that point, and you might need to just take out all the debris that gets in there, all the droppings, or top it up with some fresh soil or fresh sand, and they'll love you for that. Sand bath looks relatively clean in this one, but I'll need to do a bit of work on that. Needs a bit of a clean out. It's not too bad. Another thing I do probably monthly is till the bedding. I have bedding, so they're on the ground, and there are some points, communal areas around the feed, around the drinker, and a few other key points where they get some sun or some nice visibility in the cage. They tend to gather, and they can mat that out because of their droppings. They can create a mat, and it doesn't dry out very well and tends to smell. So I just give that a bit of a scrape. It's no big deal, just scrape it, loosen it up, and then the droppings fall down and it tends to get turned over just by their feet. So that's something I do periodically. It's worth doing just to watch them. It's kind of fun. Keeps them happy too. And then obviously quarterly I will replace the whole bedding and I put it into a compost. It's mostly composted because they've been dropping into it throughout, so I just gather it up, put it into a compost, and then maybe a month later I'll be putting it in the garden, depending on what I've got going on. And again, that's not too much of a thing because it's only 3 or 4 times a year I would say I do it, depending on how many birds I've got and how wet it's been. If it's been a wet summer, it tends to spoil faster, which is fine because it breaks down and then it's ready for the garden, but it's just more work, to clean it. I actually don't mind. I find it's kind of fun just clearing it out and getting a fresh start and getting the garden going, and getting those vegetables growing again is always good. And finally there's ad hoc, so there's repairs. You'll always get roof leaks, some screw will come loose, some area will start to rot maybe because it's had too much water against it. Things will need to be tightened, the latches or hinges on the doors will need to be fixed. There's just a lot of things like that. Even around the edge of the cage I'll need to fill it back up because sometimes there'll be a bit of erosion. There's things like that you need to monitor. So they're the ad hoc things that will come up once in a while. But generally, if you built your cage pretty strong, you shouldn't need to do too much. So that's about it. That's not a lot of work when you go across the whole year, and for what you get out of all the eggs and meat and all the good experience of just raising your own food, it's just not a lot of work really involved.